If YouTube would allow it, I would just kind of like scream and possibly moan into the mic for 8 minutes. That's my like genuine reaction to this chapter. Because, well, I think partially the context surrounding this chapter is even more emotional. With Mira's passing and the series not really having any sort of updates regarding news for around a year, it's finally now being taken care of by the assistance of Mira, as well as Mori, the author of Holy Land, and a few other works that I would highly recommend checking out. Now, as to regarding the actual narrative of Berserk, I think talking about the crossroads of Guts' character is what really was standing out to me as I was reading both of these chapters. With Guts finally reaching the island and restoring Casca's mind, what would be the next step Guts was to take? And I think these two chapters, along with what previously was happening, just goes to show how truly well written these characters are, as Guts is a character who has reached the point of development to where we can now sort of speculate on what decisions he would make and what reactions he would have to certain events that take place. Guts were to be left unprovoked, would he stay on the island and protect Casca but keep his distance from her knowing that his presence upsets her, or would he go off and leave once again? Something that is really up in the air and debatable, but I personally think he would stay as he seemed pretty hell-bent on not leaving her again. But if he were to be provoked, if the worst were to happen and hell were to break loose on the island, would Guts be pushed further into his quest for vengeance once again, especially with the Berserker armor and the Beast of Darkness having influence on him? And as soon as the Moonlight Boy appeared on the island, I instantly knew it was as if a ticking time bomb was under the table, ready to go off at any moment. And that's what these next two chapters presented. Now, chapter 365 and 366, which, by the way, I had completely forgotten that we were getting two chapters at once, they didn't have much dialogue, but I don't think it was really necessary, as the visual representation of Guts' emotions, Casca's reaction, and Griffith standing there, naked, was, I think, good enough to really set the scene and the emotion, and once again spark that feeling of hatred we all had for Griffith. I love the way that it started off with this beautiful scenery shot, then showing Puck flying over the moon, as him and the other fantasy creatures start realizing that a certain presence is arriving on the island. Casca then walks out and sees Griffith, and her brand begins to react as she then starts having memories of the past, with everything that has been going on, even going back to the eclipse. And so with this sort of shattering thing, we then see Shirka's reaction and Griffith's eye pierce into her more as Casca seems to be having a pretty heavy panic attack, while Guts' reaction is to simply just attack. And I think that just proved everything that I was thinking in the previous chapters, that if Guts were to be provoked once again, I don't think he could really stop himself. Once again, on a quick side note, I think the artwork in these chapters looked absolutely stunning and incredible, and I know that's to be expected from Berserk. However, it never hurts to point it out again and again and again. And so chapter 365 ends on a bit of a cliffhanger as we see Guts ready to swing down on Griffith with the iconic all blacked out face and eye glowing white. However, the way that his eye is drawn I think is a very interesting detail, as it's not done in the way that it was done back in the Conviction arc or in other sectors where it's simply Guts' eye. This time, the eye seems to mirror that of the Beast of Darkness. I think these next few chapters will truly be a turning point for Guts' character, truly the conflict between him and his own inner self, fighting for that desire for vengeance. And I mean, right now he seems to be losing a little bit, but that only makes the scene a little more tense, as not only Griffith's presence will disturb Casca, but if Guts gives in more and more into his darkness, will Casca getting her mind back even be able to tolerate being around him? Something that in earlier chapters seemed to not be the case. So then we jump to chapter 366 as it opens up with Guts swinging down his might heavily upon Griffith, but then the sword just phases through him completely. And Guts, in a panic, seems to turn around, swing again going for Griffith's head, but once again, it phases through Griffith once more. Guts freaking out, not really understanding what's happening. Griffith turns around slowly, and just really seems to upset Guts even more, as we then see Guts frantically swinging about over and over and over and over again, but yet none of the strikes seem to be landing on Griffith at all. This moment is great, and with Guts giving in to the Beast of Darkness and possibly its powers, him now realizing just how weak he is and just how far ahead Griffith is in terms of power will only push Guts more and more into possibly giving into the darkness in order to achieve some sort of power that might allow him to best Griffith. I think this is something that really adds a lot of tension and conflict between, once again, Guts' decision and what he has to do. Will letting go of his humanity be the only solution to besting Griffith, to once again freeing himself of all this and getting his revenge? And so, with not only making it very clear to Guts once again how feeble he is to the likes of Griffith, it also just sparked an immense hatred for Griffith and me once again, with having Casca over there panicking, and just not even him landing a single hit on Griffith was beyond frustrating to read, but in all the proper ways. Shirke then, being in her magic state, if you will, sees a being that she believes to be her master. But yet that's not the case, as Farnese anchors her mind, telling her not to go towards it. With now Shirke and Farnese holding Casca all together, they witness Guts swinging frantically at Griffith in a rage, as both of them just simply watch. But yet at that moment, something arrives on the island, as it swings down quickly, flying through and through, and as we see the shades of what it might be, it becomes clearer and clearer as we then see the claws grab for Guts, and Guts avoids the strike. The final panel of chapter 366, Nosferatu Zod arrives on the island. I think we can all agree that Fantasia as a whole, but especially this final stretch of the arc, has been nothing but absolutely mind-blowing with everything that we've gotten. Hints at Skull Knight's backstory, Griffith arriving on the island, Zod arriving on the island, everything with Casca's mind being recovered. Like, it's all too much. And I think if I were to go over and reread all these chapters through once again, I legitimately don't know if I could handle it. This is something that Berserk as a series seems to have mastered, and that's the ability to end the chapters on a proper cliffhanger every time. Because now the possibilities for the next chapter are limitless. Does Zod once again take Griffith and leave the island, or do both of them wreak havoc upon the island, as then Skull Knight appears and dukes it out with Zod one more time, and this time we actually get to see their confrontation? Will Guts give in to the Berserker armor and achieve some new sort of power with it, as the blacksmith earlier was telling him that he was not using it to its fullest capabilities? Does Griffith transform into Femto, revealing his real self to all the others who were present? What does Casca do in this case? It's just all, it's too much. I can't, if there was any sort of way to re-spark interest into the series after the passing of Kentaro Miura, may he rest in peace once again, and with everything that had been going on, these two short, quick chapters were absolute bangers, and I think they absolutely nailed it with just everything that they were trying to set up. Once again, investing us in Guts' quest of revenge and making very clear the absolute crossroads he is in, the arrival of Nosferatu Zod on the island. Once again, the peace that Guts had for a short moment was broken, and we're once again thrown into the tense world of the struggler. Do they decide to flash back and show a little more of the backstory between Zod and the Skull Knight if those two do end up having a confrontation? I absolutely love this, and I think all the support and the love should be shown entirely to the assistants and the team that is continuing to work on this under the direction of Mori, as the amount of pressure they must have been feeling had to have been immense. But I just want to make it very well known that in my opinion at least, they absolutely knocked this out of the park. There wasn't any side things with Isidro or Shirke really. There wasn't a lot of dialogue to slow the chapter down. It was everything that I think these two chapters needed to be. And it absolutely incredible. I couldn't be any happier, at least, having the series come back in such a triumphant way. Chapter 366, saying in its final page, the wedge is driven into the island that suffers no evil. A deluge of darkness descends. Will other apostles possibly show up? And if they do, will they wreak havoc upon the island, thus making Guts and his team have to retreat once again? Again, the possibilities to this chapter are absolutely just limitless, really, and once again, I'm on the edge of my seat waiting for the next chapter to come out. I'm not personally sure, and I haven't read any news regarding the release schedule of Berserk and, you know, how often chapters will be coming out. So if one of you have read anything regarding that, if you could send it to me or just let me know in the comment section below, that would be absolutely great. And as always, let me know your thoughts on this chapter and the direction the story might take next. As always, this has been The Masked Man. I hope everyone has a blessed rest of the day, and peace.